Hey guys, on this episode, I want to talk to you about something that Anwar has been saying quite frequently recently. What he has said is basically has something to do with whether he should be a dictator. Now, the most recent occasion where he said it was recently, at something called the Asian Madani Leadership Symposium. Now, in this symposium, during a speech, I think what he basically said, Anna, I'm going to read to you his what he said in verbatim. This is what he said, one person is granted a DNAA and a group criticizes the Prime Minister. The following week, another person receives a DNAA and a different group blames the Prime Minister. These are the same people who talk about the independence of the judiciary. What exactly do they want? Do they expect me to act like a dictator and force judges to rule according to their personal choices? End of quote. So basically this question where he asked, do they expect me to act like a dictator? This is actually the second time that I remember in recent time. Maybe I said it more times, that one I don't know. But what I know for sure, he has said it at least 2 times in the last 1, 2 or 3 months. Now, I don't know about you, but my question to the answer, do we expect Anwar to be a dictator? I think my answer is going to be, yeah, bro, we expect you to be a dictator. Let me be clear, I don't say this lightly. I have in fact predicted for many years in my writings that if Anwar is serious about reforms, he would eventually be forced to be a dictator. Why? Because reform, real reform, cannot happen in Malaysia without going through pain. And that pain cannot be administered through gentle persuasion or democratic consensus. Cannot, Reform in Malaysia, if it's real, it's going to be painful. If it's not painful, it's just going to be cosmetic. Cosmetic means like you you write some law, make some changes there, some changes here, but in substance, we are still the same. So, Malaysians might not actually be saying it out loud, but in putting Anwar into power, we were essentially asking him to rescue us from ourselves. For decades, we have sensed that there is something wrong with us. We can see it through the corruption, through the racial and religious division, through the economic exploitation, and through the increasing call for regional separatism. But we have been too entrenched in our inherited beliefs and values to break free from the values that is giving us all this problem. At the core of our national problem is something called Mahathirism. Now, I'm not sure whether I should be calling it Mahathirism, but to make it simple, and I think it's roughly more or less correct. I'm just going to call the problem that we have, corruption, economic exploitation, ethno-religious division, regional separatism. These are the main problems that we have. It's because of a value, of a set of values that we believe and practice. And I'm going to call these values and practices as Mahathirism. Alright. Now, this value was established in us during Mahathir's time, during his 22 years of reign especially, which while beneficial in the short run has now become toxic. It was beneficial. Nobody said it was not beneficial. People have, as we know, we basically changed our country from a backward economy to a relatively modern economy because of during Mahathir's time. But the problem is Mahathirism also has a value that justifies power accumulation through patronage. It also justifies ethno-religious division. It also justifies expediency, especially political expediency over principles, which might be useful in giving Malaysia rapid development. But it also caused us to have the dysfunction, the corruption, exploitation, racial and religious division, as well as regional separatism that we see today. But despite seeing the consequences of Mahathirism, we cannot reject Mahathirism because we have internalized it. It's now a part of us. We admire the most successful products of Mahathirism. Let us not doubt that. We glorify figures like Mahathir and Daim, even while we blame them for our problems. Why? Because they represent what we aspire in life. They represent wealth, prestige, title, power, admiration, status. Even when that success is rooted in corruption and manipulation, we still want a part of it. Now, here's the rule, yeah? We will become whoever we admire. Now, as long as we admire these figures, we will be like that. So, this is why reform is so difficult. You cannot change a country simply by changing its leaders or institutions. You have to change its values, yeah? And changing values is one of the hardest things that any society can do. It's basically asking you to change yourself. The problem in asking us to change ourselves is even when we know we are bad for us, we still want to be us. That is why it's very difficult to ask an addict to give up their addiction, because it's the one thing that makes them feel like it's themselves. It's also very difficult to ask a child who's raised in an abusive household to reject the values that they got from the abusive household. They can't reject it. Many of them can't reject it because that's who they are. That value that caused them to be abused is who they are. That's why when they grow up, a person from an abused household will generally be an abusive parent. Now, reformacy, by its very definition, is a break from the past, yeah? But cutting off the past is not an easy thing. It requires us to basically to cut off a part of ourselves, and that is an agonizing process. No one gives up their identity easily, even when we know that that identity is also a source of our suffering. And you know who holds on to the values of Mahathirism the most tightly? It's the elites. The political, corporate and social elite in Malaysia are the ones who are most invested in the status quo, because it is the status quo that made them who they are. If we truly believe that Mahathir era was built on corruption and things like racial manipulation, we must also accept that many of our so-called success stories were built on this very foundation. But try telling the elites that it's their value system that is flawed. Try telling them it's because of their value system that we have such problems like economic exploitation, corruption, racial and religious tension, and I'm 110% sure that they are not going to accept it. As a matter of fact, they're probably just going to blame you for being bitter, blame you for being envious of their success, blame you for being divisive and trying to destroy the country, and blame you for being ungrateful for everything that the elites have contributed towards the country, and also ungrateful for everything that the elites have done for the people, you. So the people who have benefited the most from the old system will never accept that their values are flawed. They don't want correction. They want to be applauded. They want to teach us to continue following their way. But if you tell them, we followed your way and now we are at a stage where there's so much corruption, so much racial and religious tension, so much economic exploitation, and they will probably just say, no, there is no problem with their way. It's just that we are not following it correctly, and continue to insist that we should follow their way, and if we follow it correctly, everything will be A-okay. This is why democracy doesn't work in the situation that we are in. Democracy basically passes a set of shared values across generation. Now, if those values work, the values that the past generation held worked, the best way to pass it from the previous generation to the next generation is democracy. But if the values that we inherited from the past is rotten at its core, then democracy will simply reproduce the rot. That is why, paradoxically, reform actually requires a dictator. We require a dictator not in the classic sense of a tyrant or a despot who is like holding on to power for personal gain just because it makes him feel important. But we probably need a dictator in a light of a benevolent authoritarian who is willing to do what democracy won't force the nation to do, which is go through withdrawal or discard the old values that is causing us problems that we recognize. We can see that we have a problem. We just can't let go of the values because it just feels like it's a part of us. And so we need to be forced to let it go. And this force can only come from an authoritarian rule. Weaning ourselves from Mahathirism is almost certainly going to be painful. It might hurt the economy, at least in the short run. It might even strain social harmony, and it might challenge everything that we thought we knew about success, about leadership, about identity, about what is right, about what is wrong. And Malaysians, like any group going through a detox, will likely resist the reformation of the old values every step of the way. We will scream, we will accuse, we will cry betrayal. But Anwar might be the only one with the mandate. I'm not sure whether Anwar is the only one with the mandate to be a dictator. But I do feel that maybe it's him. But one thing is for sure, I do feel that we are going to require a dictator with a moral authority and a vision and knowledge to carry out this reform, so that we can discard the old values and go back to a proper value that is going to not magnify our problem with racism and corruption and separatism and exploitation. But the only question we have to ask ourselves is is Anwar is the right person, and will he do it? To do it, the danger or the challenge that Anwar will face the most will probably come from the elites, because like I said, the elites are likely the only group that profited from the old values. So they are not going to accept you telling them that your values are wrong and flawed and it's burdening the nation. They are not going to be saying that. They are going to be saying our values are correct, that you are actually wrong for trying to oppose the values. You are just opposing our values because you are envious, or you are whatever it is, envious. You're jealous of our success. This is what the elites will be telling us, So for Anwar to do the reformasi, he's probably is he ready to lose friends? Is he maybe even lose elections to push through the reforms that will make Malaysia better in the long run, even if it makes us worse in the short run? If he's willing to become a dictator, we hope that he's willing to be a dictator not because he craves for power, but because reform demands pain, and only the strong can withstand the fury it brings. Now, if Anwar truly wants to be the reformer that history remembers, he must perhaps start to consider that being a dictator in spirit, in resolve, in action, might not be a betrayal of reformasi, but its only path forward. Think about it, guys. Good night. Have a good day.